What's up, you guys? Welcome to my channel and welcome back if you're a returning viewer. It's great to have you here with me. Today I have a very exciting video for you because yes, it's finally time to talk about the quintessential Halloween release of the year, the one that a lot of us have been patiently waiting for. Of course, it is Kringle Candles Halloween Collection 2026 Part 1. Yes, the Black Jar Halloween collection is finally here, and it's looking a little different this year as all of the black jars are going to be featured in the new 3-wick format, as well as the 4 wicks for the first time ever. Now, before we get into the brand new and returning fragrances, I do want to disclose that I am a Kringle Candle ambassador, which means if you use the code Wickeddullboy, you can save 15% off of your purchase over at Kringle Candle. Now, this is a commission code, so if you use it, I do receive a small amount of kickback from it. So if you do plan to use it or have used it in the past, I do want to thank you very much. And it's because of use of that code that I was sent all 9 brand new Halloween fragrances from Kringle Candle to preview for you guys. So I do want to say thank you to Kringle Candle for sending these my way. And I do also want to thank you guys for your continued support, as it really does mean a lot to me. So getting into some launch information here, this year there will be 19 fragrances in total for the Black Jar collection. There will be 9 brand new scents and 10 returning fragrances, and all of them will be featured in the standard 22-ounce 3-wick jar and the 32-ounce 4-wick. And since these fragrances are considered to be reserve fragrances for this year, the 3 wicks will be priced at $34 and the 4 wicks will be $50 in price. And all of them will be launching on August 7th at Midnight EST, which is that Thursday into Friday midnight, meaning that if you are on the West Coast, these will be available to you at 9:00 p.m. on August 6th. So let's go ahead and go over what is going to be returning here first. There will be 10 fragrances, including Black Cat, Cabin in the Woods, Candy Corn, Graveyard Night, Haunted Hollows, Mummy Marshmallow, Pumpkinhead, Scarecrow, Sleepy Hollow, and Trick or Treat. Now, I think that this is a decent lineup of returning favorites, as there's a little bit of something for everyone to enjoy here. Now, the only scent that I have never tried from the 10 returning fragrances is actually the Candy Corn, but fortunately I have tried all of the other 9 scents, and if you'd like my full in-depth thoughts on most of those scents, I am going to be including in the info card above all of my past Kringle Candle videos. I have gone over all of these scents at least once, but bottom line for the returning fragrances this year, my top 3 of that lineup is, of course, Sleepy Hollow. That is one of my favorite Halloween fragrances and one of my favorite fragrances ever. Scarecrow is a really nice bergamot, tobacco, and leather combination. It is slightly cologne leaning, but I personally really love that one. And the last one that I want to point you to is Haunted Hollows. That one is this really amazing smoky apple and foggy forest combination. It's truly spooky, and it is kind of the replacement for Witch's Cauldron for me in the lineup this year, as unfortunately, Witch's Cauldron is not returning this year, at least in the black jars. I don't really know what's going to be featured in part 2 of this collection, but with the info that we have right now, unfortunately, no Witch's Cauldron, which is such a bummer because we finally get the large formats with the 3 wicks and the 4 wicks, and then Witch's Cauldron doesn't return, and I wanted a 4-wick of Witch's Cauldron for so long, but it's okay. I'm only slightly upset about it. I do really hope that one returns next year, and as long as we're doing suggestions here, Kringle, if you're watching and are still finalizing a list for next year, I would really like to throw out that you should bring back Blood Moon, Apparition, and Spirit's Call from the Country Candle line a few years ago. Those 3 are awesome Halloween fragrances, and I really think they deserve the larger format treatment. But with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the 9 brand new fragrances coming to the Halloween collection this year. So the 9 new scents are Dark Orchard, Death by Chocolate, Freak Show, Hansel's Trail, Haunted Harvest, Krampus, Sisters 3, the Raven, and finally, Vampire's Kiss. So before we get into my first sniff impressions and post burns here, I did want to mention a couple of things about some of these labels here, as some of the labels this year didn't quite meet the quality of what I have come to expect from the Kringle candle Halloween line, specifically with the Hansel's Trail and the Vampire's Kiss. I'm not sure if you can tell on camera here, but they do look like a little bit pixelated, specifically in the hair up here and the fingers down here. This is something that I noticed straight out of the box with Hansel's specifically, as I don't know if it's necessarily coming through on camera, but the trees up here have like a little bit of like a pixelated quality to them, and the house itself looks quite blocky to me. They actually don't look too bad from far away, but up close it is pretty noticeable to me. As far as I can tell, this pixelation is only really affecting the Hansel's Trail and the Vampire's Kiss. I'm not exactly sure what happened with those two specifically, and at the end of the day, it's not the biggest issue of all time, as it doesn't affect the candle portion in any way, but I did feel it was important to mention up front here, since I know for some people out there, they do buy these candles specifically for the label itself to display in their Halloween decor. I mean, I know I personally love to display my Kringles every year in my Halloween decorating. I'm not actually sure if this is something that has affected just the PR situation or if every candle is going to look like that, but I did just want to mention that is a possibility. So if that's going to bother you, I just wanted to let you know that it is there. So let's go ahead and now get into my first sniff impressions, which I filmed a few days ago now, and then after that we will go over my post-burn thoughts. And I do recommend that you stick around for the post-burn thoughts because quite a bit of my thoughts have changed after the first burn. Okay, so first impressions here. I am definitely excited to jump straight into these, but I also wanted to say up here first, I'm kind of interested on how I'm going to feel about these candles, because usually what I enjoy from the Black Jar Halloween collection is those more like upfront spooky and out there offerings, and I feel like that's what this line is kind of known for. But I did notice that this year a lot of them seem to have more of those gourmand scent notes, so I'm wondering if a lot of these are going to be like a straight up gourmand or if they're going to have a little bit of a spooky element thrown in there. So that is definitely the most interesting thing to me here, but I am so ready to get started. So let's go ahead and dive in first here with Dark Orchard. So Dark Orchard has scent notes of a top of apple, caramel, lactonic, and sweet, a mid of amber, tonka bean, and vanilla, and a base of musky. So this one kind of sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a unique take on a caramel apple scent. For a scent with orchard in the name, I'm kind of surprised not to find any woody scent notes in there, but the musky scent note on the base is what I think is going to make this one a little bit more dark. So let's find out how dark this orchard is. Surprisingly not very dark at all. Maybe just a little bit. That muskiness is coming through just a little bit now. This one is really interesting. So right on the top of this one, I am getting a little bit of that caramel smell. It's not a super dark, heavy caramel, not overwhelmingly sweet to me. I am getting a little bit of that apple coming through. It is more of that like bright red, crisp apple, but I wouldn't say that the apple is what jumps out at me first here. I do get a little bit of that like lactonic milkiness as well mixing in with the caramel. It does smell very creamy. And then underneath that, I am getting that amber and definitely the musk. This one almost has like a caramel apple body care type of scent. It's very, very smooth and a little bit light on cold here. And this one, once again, is kind of reminding me of like the ambered apple and walnut from last year's Reserve collection, just like the brown butter pear from the fall collection this year. I actually think that the brown butter pear and this one kind of share a lot of similarities in the way of having that like buttery caramel mixed in with a fruit scent. For a scent called Dark Orchard, this one actually isn't very dark or spooky at all. It is kind of like nice and creamy and enjoyable. Once again, it is kind of light on cold, so I'm wondering if this thing is really going to open up while it's burning. As far as on cold here, I am kind of enjoying what it's doing. I do like a good caramel apple scent, but it's not necessarily standing out to me as of right now. I'm wondering how I'm going to feel about this one post-burn. All right, so coming up next here, let's go ahead and talk about Death by Chocolate. So Death by Chocolate has scent notes of a top of crushed walnuts, a middle of dark chocolate, and a base of vanilla sugar. So I am kind of surprised to see the addition of another chocolate scent for this year's lineup, especially since we have the return of last year's version of Trick or Treat, which was this kind of like milk chocolate truffle with a little bit of walnuts in there. I do remember that candle being really, really sweet. So I'm very interested to see if this one is going to set itself apart from Trick or Treat, especially with the dark chocolate note. I am a dark chocolate fan, so maybe this one's going to be a little bit less sweet than that candle, but let's go ahead and find out. Okay, it is a little bit less sweet than last year's Trick or Treat. I am getting a really nice dark chocolate out of this one. So I guess it's obvious to say if you don't like chocolate candles, Death by Chocolate's probably not the one for you. And then I am getting a little bit of a nuttiness out of this one as well. But I wouldn't say that the walnuts are really dominant in here. It really is just that kind of classic like dark chocolate candy bar with some crushed walnuts embedded into the chocolate. And I definitely prefer this to the Trick or Treat as it is noticeably less sweet. And as someone who isn't really a fan of chocolate scents in general, mainly due to how sweet and how overpowering they get, and while this is very distinctly chocolate, it doesn't smell like it would be too sweet or too overpowering on a burn. So definitely looking forward to see how I feel about this one post-burn. So coming up next here, we have what is probably my favorite or is in the running for my favorite label of the year, and that is Freak Show. I just love the like little circus tent vibe. I'm not the most into like clowns for Halloween, but something about like freak show circus type vibes I do really like. But anyways, the scent notes on Freak Show are a top of honey and banana, a middle of butterscotch, fondant, and red apple, and a base of caramel, coconut, and vanilla cream. So this one definitely sounds like one of the most gourmand forward candles, but I am a really big fan of banana scents and caramel scents and apple scents, so I am kind of enjoying what I'm seeing from the scent notes on this one. But how do they all combine? Let's find out. Whoa, that is a really sweet, but I am kind of digging it. I kind of really like this one. So straight off the top of this one, I am getting hit with that distinct banana scent. It does smell more like an artificial banana, kind of like a Laffy Taffy type of banana. It is very forward, very sugary. And then underneath that, you are definitely getting that very heavy butterscotch, super syrupy, super sweet, almost like the butterscotch syrup that you would get from like the squeeze bottle, like the Hershey's one, or like the butterscotch syrup that you would get on like a butterbeer at Universal Studios. I'm not necessarily getting a ton of the apple in there on cold. It is in there, you can smell it distinctly, but it's more blended into the background. I wouldn't say that the apple is the most prominent thing here. And then you are definitely getting that caramel from the base and a little bit of that coconut in there as well. It almost smells like a toasted like coconut flakes. Like the caramel and the coconut combination is kind of giving me like Girl Scout cookie vibes, like the chocolate and the coconut caramel flake ones. It's kind of reminding me of that, but without the chocolate. And then crazily enough, you are getting a little bit of that fondant as well. It's like that distinct, like really tough, almost taffy-like sugary frosting that you would find on a cake. It almost feels like you could take a bite out of it. That's how like authentic it is. But yeah, once again, for a candle called Freak Show, there's nothing really freaky about this one. It's actually very fun and sugary and sweet. And usually I don't really like a super sweet fragrance, and I am very interested to see if I'm going to enjoy this thing while it's burning, as it definitely feels like it could be a little bit too heavy. But for like a circus type of fragrance, I feel like it does work, because when you go to like a carnival or a circus, you are getting those like concession stands where they're selling like a candied apple. I do think that the scent here does work a little bit better in the context of Freak Show than like the caramel apple for Dark Orchard. Overall though, I am quite enjoying this thing on cold. I am a sucker for a good caramel scent, and I do think that it is like a fun, sweet, fruity fragrance. For Halloween, it is a little bit interesting in the lineup, so I am excited to light this one up and see how it develops when it's burning. So coming up next here, we have a candle with a theme that I don't think I've ever seen done for Halloween before, and that is Hansel's Trail. So yeah, a little bit of an interesting pick here, but those old fairy tales do have like a sense of scariness and dread around them. So I'm not gonna say that it doesn't make sense here, it's just a very interesting choice. And I do kind of respect that about it. So the scent notes on Hansel's Trail are a top of candied blueberries, a mid of sugared cookies, and a base of vanilla marshmallow. So very simple scent notes and very unspooky scent notes. Marshmallow I can definitely see for fall, but blueberries to me is more of like a spring summer fragrance. So I'm very interested to see what this thing has got going on. So let's find out. I really like it. Okay. All right. So yeah, straight off the top of this one, you are getting hit with that blueberry. Very bright, very sugary. It almost smells like that blueberry syrup that you would get at like an IHOP. Like the blueberries that have been cooked in like a sugary syrup and it's turned that like really dark shade of purple. That's always my go-to when I go to IHOP. So I'm definitely loving that scent in here. And then underneath it, you are getting that really nice, buttery, fresh baked sugar cookie scent. And then underneath that, I guess you are getting a little bit of the marshmallow. I wouldn't say that this is like a super toasty marshmallow, almost like a marshmallow fluff like you would get at the store in one of those containers. I think it's like the Jet Puff like marshmallow fluff. Yeah, definitely like that buttery sugar cookie with the marshmallow fluff spread, and then you throw those like gooey blueberries on top. I mean, I'm not really like a gourmand lover, but this one's kind of winning me over. I do love that blueberry scent that's happening in here. But once again, it does smell like it is a little bit too sweet. Like it is really not shy with the sugar in here. So I wonder if I am going to be able to stomach it on a burn. It is a really nice gourmand blueberry scent. For Halloween though, I don't think this really fits, and I don't even think this really fits for like a fall collection either. I could see this really rocking in like a spring lineup. I actually do quite enjoy this one on cold, but once again, not really Halloween, not really spooky at all. But if you do enjoy a good blueberry scent, if you enjoy a good cookie scent, or even if you like a blueberry cheesecake type of scent, I think you would really dig this thing. But yeah, very interesting theme, very interesting choice of scent on this one for the Halloween line. I am kind of excited to light this one up, as it does smell like it's going to be a very fun, sugary time. All right, so up next here, we have the one pumpkin scent of the 9 new fragrances, and that is Haunted Harvest. So Haunted Harvest has scent notes of a top of lemon, orange, and ginger, a middle of pumpkin, clove, and cinnamon, and a base of vanilla and sugar. So this one definitely sounds like it's going to be that classic fall pumpkin spice, although with the inclusion of the lemon, the orange, and the ginger on top, I'm wondering if it's going to have a little bit more of a bite to it. And I'm also wondering how this one is going to differentiate itself from Pumpkinhead, which also had a combination of the orange and the pumpkin. So let's go ahead and find out here. Ooh, I really like this one. Okay, it is kind of classic fall. Oh, but it is bright. There is like a zinginess to this one that I am really liking. There's like almost like a sourness to it. So straight off the top of this one, I am getting those citrusy notes. I am getting a little bit more of the lemon than the orange in here. It has a little bit of that sharp sourness that a lemon brings. And then I'm definitely getting that zingy ginger off the top as well. And then underneath that, you are getting this really nice, authentic pumpkin scent. And to me, it doesn't smell like a gourmand pumpkin. It doesn't even smell like pumpkin puree. It literally smells like the flesh of a pumpkin. Like the way that the lemon and the pumpkin is combining together, it almost smells like when you freshly carve a pumpkin and you open it up and smell the inside. I am getting a little bit of that in there. You can smell like the fresh, almost wateriness of it with that distinct pumpkin flesh. This one is so good on cold. Man, I am really, really loving this one. I am definitely getting a little bit of that cinnamon and clove as well. It is definitely more clove than it is cinnamon. And the pumpkin note in this one is also kind of reminding me of the pumpkin note in Sleepy Hollow as well. Like almost to the point where I think the two might actually be related. And thankfully, this one actually does not smell anything like Pumpkinhead. Although I really do love Pumpkinhead, but I'm very much glad that this one is standing out on its own. Very, very excited to light this one up. This is probably the standout of the collection for me so far. So very excited to see if Haunted Harvest will be topped. So up next here, we have the surprising inclusion of a Christmas themed candle in the Halloween line, but with the dark side of Christmas in Krampus. So Krampus has scent notes of a top of smoke, rosemary and orange, a middle of eucalyptus, leather, and vegetable, and a base of guaiac wood, cedar wood, and patchouli. So funnily enough here, the candle with the Christmas theme in the Halloween collection surprisingly sounds like it has the darkest scent notes out of the entire collection. There has been a noticeable lack of smoke in the scent notes this year, so I find it very funny that it's put in the one with the holiday theme, but I'm definitely looking forward to that, and also figuring out what some of these scent notes are going to be doing in this candle, especially the vegetable scent note. And I am also seeing that eucalyptus scent note in the middle, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, so I have no idea what to expect here. So let's go ahead and finally find out. Whoa. Wow, that is such a unique combination of scents. So straight off the top of this one, I am getting hit with that smoke. It is very dark, very thick smoke. Then I am getting that distinct herbal note from the rosemary and just a little bit of that citrus as well. And then underneath that, I am getting a nice smoky cedar, definitely that earthy patchouli, and I am getting that sharp leather as well. This one is so like dark and foreboding, but at the same time, it does kind of have like a holiday cheeriness to it. I do unfortunately get a little bit of that eucalyptus in there, but it's not super overpowering to me. It kind of just adds in this like cooling element, almost like a cold winter air. It's so interesting how you can smell all the individual layers in this. It's almost like it's Christmas time. You can smell the holiday cheer in the air. There's a frigid winter breeze happening, and then this dark foreboding figure flows through. He's carrying around a leather sack that's filled to the brim with a smoky fire kindling. Now, I don't know if I necessarily smell like a vegetable in this one. It does kind of have like a squashiness to it. There is almost a savory funk to it though. I do quite like this one on cold. This one does also have like a hearthiness to it as well. It's almost giving like a burnt out fireplace. I do think that this is actually a perfect spooky Christmas scent, and that's always something I'm looking for the holiday season, since I do have the Halloween hangover every year. So I am very excited to have this one going into this holiday season. Definitely digging this one on cold, and I am very excited to see how this thing develops while it's burning, because on cold there is a lot happening. There's a lot of different layers and you can smell every single one of them. So very excited to see what shines through here on a burn. All right, so coming up next here, we have the witchy scent of the bunch with Sisters 3. So Sisters 3 has scent notes of a top of raspberry, grape, and orange, a middle of cinnamon, jasmine, and rose, and a base of cedar, musk, and sandalwood. So this one, based on the label, I was very excited for. I was kind of hoping that it would be the Witch's Cauldron replacement amongst the lineup here, as it's unfortunately not returning in this first wave. Maybe it'll come along in the future. We don't really know what's going to be included in part 2 just yet, but seeing that cedar base note, I'm thinking maybe it will be going along that line, but the inclusion of the fruity notes on the top, especially the grape, has me very interested to know what this thing has going on. So let's see what these three sisters have in store for us. Grape is what they have in store for us. Lots of grape. Whoa. Okay, this is really interesting. Okay, so yeah, straight off at the top of this one, I am getting a lot of those fruity notes, the raspberry and the grape specifically. The grape is like overpowering here, and it does kind of have like that medicinal grape type of quality to my nose. And then underneath that, you are getting hit with that distinct floral. I am getting that rose quite a bit. It does smell more like a lively, fresh rose. I am getting a little bit of that jasmine as well. Oh, there is something funky happening in this candle. I think it's coming from that musk on the base of this one. There is some like musky dank smell in here, and unfortunately on cold I don't think it's in a good way. I'm not getting a lot of cinnamon out of this one, so if you're scared of the cinnamon note, I would say that it's not really present here on cold. And I'm not getting a ton of that cedar note on the base either. I wouldn't classify this as a woody fragrance. It's more so along the lines of like a fruity floral, and then definitely a heavy dose of that musk. These are some musky sisters. This one is very intriguing on cold. I don't know if I'm necessarily liking what's going on here. There's a little bit of like a funkiness that is really just not agreeing with my nose personally. And usually I am a very big fan of like a floral, and I don't mind a little bit of fruit thrown into my floral, but this one, the fruit is really up front and almost drowns it out just a little bit. It's kind of got like an old perfumey type of vibe going on. I'm very interested to see what I am going to think of this one post burn. On cold here, it is like a little bit too odd for me. I'm not sure if it's really melding well. So I wonder if giving it a burn is going to help it come alive just a little bit more. So definitely stay tuned for my post-burn thoughts on this one. So up next here, let's go ahead and talk about the Raven. So the Raven has scent notes of a top of bergamot and wood, a middle of vetiver and herbal, and a base of moss and oud. So this one definitely sounds like a little bit more my speed for Halloween. Loving those herbal and woody scent notes, and I do tend to enjoy bergamot quite a bit. So let's see what the Raven smells like. Yeah, this is definitely more my speed. Oh, this is gorgeous. Very herbal and atmospheric. Straight off the top of this one, you are getting hit with a really nice aged wood scent, followed very closely by that vetiver. There is a really nice, intense vetiver scent in this that almost gives off a like fresh cut grass type of vibe. And then on the base, you're getting this really beautiful moss scent. It is very green. This one just puts you straight in the middle of a cemetery, more so like one of those unmarked cemeteries, straight in the middle of the woods. There's grass and moss growing over the tombstone. The dirt and vines have overtaken everything, and there's a nice spooky fog that's just rolled in. Man, this one is so beautiful and atmospheric and distinctly spooky. Definitely a breath of fresh air from all of the gourmands in this collection. It's so bright and herbal and green, while at the same time having a little bit of that decay in there. This one is absolutely a standout for me here on cold, and I definitely cannot wait to light this one up. All right, so last up here, let's go ahead and talk about Vampire's Kiss. So the scent notes on Vampire's Kiss are a top of black blackberry and citrus, a middle of wine and fruit, and a base of oak wood and spice. So I am usually a fan of blackberry scents and wine scents, so I'm wondering if this one is going to have more of a deep, dark take on that with the oak wood and spice thrown in there. So let's see what Vampire's Kiss has to offer. It definitely does have like a deep, dark, gothic type of thing happening here. I am getting quite a bit of wine out of this one, like distinctly wine. It does have that almost like fermented fruit type of feel to it. Very deep in fragrant berries. You are getting a very distinct dark blackberry scent in there. Just a little bit of that citrus. It's almost more like a mandarin or maybe an orange. It's a little bit zingy with those fruits, but then on the back end, you are getting a little bit of that woodiness, but not a lot of that spice is happening here on cold for me. This one does have a very old, aged feel to it. It does feel like it's been in a damp, dusty cellar for 1,000 years. It feels like something that you would drink at a fancy party. And yeah, maybe that party is happening at Dracula's castle. This one almost kind of smells like a more dark, complex version of like vampire blood from Bath and Body Works. Although there are no florals in this fragrance, but it does kind of have that same type of like juicy red fruit, but it's way darker, way more complex, way more deep. I think if your vibe is more of that like dark gothic aesthetic, you are going to really enjoy this one. I think the scent actually does fit very perfectly here for a vampire fragrance, and I very much am excited to see how this one performs. And we're back to present day. So when I did my first sniff impressions, I did bring them in straight from the porch and then like straight to filming. So now that I've had a few days to really let them settle, give them a couple burns, let's go back over them. Starting out once again with Dark Orchard. So despite this candle having the name of Dark Orchard, this is actually a pretty pleasant and non-dark fragrance. I did give this one a considerable around 5-hour burn today. And I do want to preface all of these burns. I did give each at least 1 4-hour burn. A couple of them I did give at least 2 just to really figure them out. So this will be just strictly like my first burn impression. But on burn with Dark Orchard, I am getting a lot of that milky caramel, the tonka bean, and the musk and amber. Unfortunately for me, what I am not really getting much of out of this fragrance is the apple, which is disappointing because based on the concept of the candle, it should really have a noticeable apple fragrance. And that's not to say that it isn't there. It is detectable on a burn, but it's definitely not the star of the show here. While I was burning this one, there was a noticeable milkiness to it. It was really, really creamy for me. I think that is coming from the tonka bean and that lactonic note at the top. And I know how people do feel about a milky scent note, so just know it is really present here. And then unfortunately underneath that, you are getting a body care element out of the amber and the musk on the base. You do get quite a bit of that body care element on burn. I do have to say that I am actually pretty disappointed on the overall execution of the concept here, as not only is it not really a dark fragrance, but it's not really much of an orchard either, as this scent doesn't have any woody scent notes and doesn't have that much apple either. As a scent on its own, it is fine and it is pleasant, but it didn't really leave much of an impression on me. And I don't think it really hits the mark of a caramel apple scent for me either, as I can't really smell that apple over the caramel. And on top of that, let's go ahead and talk about the performance on this one, as it wasn't the strongest performer for me either. It was noticeable in the room that I was burning it in. I could pick up on that milky caramel scent, but since it is so creamy and tonka bean and vanilla heavy, it is a bit lighter than I'd like. I would say that this one settled into around like a 5 out of 10 strength and throw for me. I do have a feeling that people are going to enjoy this one just a little bit more than I do, as caramel apple is kind of like a crowd pleasing scent. So if you do like caramel apple scents and want a little creaminess mixed into it and don't mind those body care elements with the amber and the musk, then I would say that you would probably really enjoy this one. For me personally, I was expecting something a little bit darker, so it didn't quite hit that mark for me. So up next here, let's talk about Death by Chocolate once again. So this one actually did surprise me quite a bit on burn. I don't typically do chocolate scents because they can become a little bit too sweet, too overbearing for me, but I really did not mind this one at all. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still a chocolate scent. If you don't like chocolate scents, I don't think that this is going to win you over or anything, but it is noticeably less sweet than any chocolate scent that I have ever tried. So on burn with this one, it is as simple as it is on cold. You do get a beautiful chocolate scent out of it, and the scent note does say dark chocolate, and that is what I smell on cold. But while it's burning, the chocolate note isn't as like bitter as I typically think a dark chocolate should be. And I was detecting more of like a milk chocolate type of vibe going on. And then on the back end of this one, obviously those walnuts come in to provide a nice nuttiness and really just kind of shake things up a little bit so that it's not too basic. This is like your classic Hershey's bar where you have the dark chocolate with walnuts embedded into it. Definitely still get that chocolate up front with the walnuts coming in on the back end. And it was actually quite enjoyable on burn. It has all of the qualities that you want from a chocolate scent without that overbearing sweetness. And I definitely prefer this scent over the Trick or Treat candle, as Trick or Treat is just a little bit too much for me personally. But I will also say after burning this one, I am still a little bit confused as to why there are two chocolate scents in the lineup this year. Death by Chocolate definitely stands itself apart from Trick or Treat, but personally to me, they are kind of just opposite sides of the same coin, and I personally would have been happier to see a spookier fragrance overtake the Trick or Treat scent, or even the apple formulation of Trick or Treat coming back in its place, and just have Death by Chocolate take the place of the chocolate scent in the lineup, because I think that this is a better representation of a straight up chocolate scent. So let's go ahead and get into the performance here. I think part of the reason I was able to stomach this one a little bit more is that the performance was surprisingly on the lighter side. Now, it wasn't as light as the Dark Orchard was. It was definitely more noticeable, more present in the room, but it wasn't blowing me out of the room like the Trick or Treat candle does, and it definitely wasn't too heavy or overwhelming for me. I would say that this one kind of settled into that like 6 out of 10 strength and throw, being that when I walked into the room, I could smell it, but I couldn't smell it beforehand. So yeah, Death by Chocolate. If you love chocolate scents, this one is definitely the one for you. All right, up next here, let's head back to the freak show. All right, so on cold, this was one that was definitely working for me. It had this slight artificial banana, like Laffy Taffy like scent, a little bit of candied apple, and a heavy dose of butterscotch and caramel. And it definitely smelled like it was going to be a little too sweet for me. But on burn, this one still does work for me, although it definitely has that sweetness factor full force. And unfortunately on the burn for me, I did lose basically all of the fruity scent notes. They are in there if you look for them. I can detect a little bit of that candied apple, and the banana actually transforms into more of that ripe banana that you would put in like a banana bread. But I wouldn't say that this is like a fruity candle. Those fruit scent notes are definitely dominated by the butterscotch and the caramel on burn. And funnily enough, the way that the caramel and the butterscotch combine actually gives this candle a kind of like caramel corn type of scent, because you are getting that butteriness from the butterscotch, and then that heavy caramel mixes in with it to create like a buttery caramel covered popcorn. Although there is no popcorn scent note in this at all, I do also still get that fondant scent note on burn. It's that specific thick sugary scent that's hanging around and just adding to the sweetness of this one. This is a very heavy fall gourmand. I did burn this one this morning when it was a bit cooler, because I can't imagine burning this one in any sort of heat, as it is very enveloping and strong. But regardless, it is quite pleasant on burn. I do like a good caramel scent, so I don't really mind this one at all. And even though it doesn't necessarily scream like Halloween to me, it does have a really nice carnival carnival vibe, which I think works really well for fall. So let's go ahead and talk performance on this thing. This one was really, really solid. I did burn this one in my living room to avoid being overwhelmed by it in a small space like my bedroom. And in there, it did do really well. It was very strong, but it wasn't strong enough that when you walked into the room, it was like punching you in the face or anything. It was just very noticeable and present and nice to smell. So this one definitely settled into that like 8 out of 10 range for me. If you love a good caramel and butterscotch candle, or if you're a really big fan of like caramel corn type of scents, then I think that you would really enjoy Freak Show. So coming up next, let's talk about Hansel's Trail. So unfortunately, this one is probably the one I have the least to say about, as it's not really a Halloween scent. So this one is basically a Christmas scent in the Halloween line, as on Cold there was a distinct sugar cookie scent, but I was kind of getting like the sugar cookie and the blueberries, which smelled like it could maybe be like a nice fall gourmand or even spring gourmand. But while lighting this one up, this one kind of just transforms into like a basic sugar cookie scent mixed in equal parts with like a Rice Krispie treat, as on burn that marshmallow note really comes through and really shines alongside the sugar cookie. But unfortunately for me, that means that basically all of the blueberry was gone on burn, and that was definitely the part I was digging the most on Cold, as I am a really big fan of blueberry scents. So this one on burn was definitely very buttery, very sweet, very enticing. I do think overall this does fit the like candied house type of vibe, although if the house was made of sugar cookies instead of gingerbread. It is quite a simple fragrance, but what it does do admittedly very well. I do actually enjoy the way that it smells, although it is way too sweet for me to burn. And as far as its placement in the Halloween line, I am actually pretty confused on this one, to be completely honest. I do think gourmand lovers are going to really, really love this thing, especially if you're into marshmallow scents or sugar cookie scents. And I think that this would have been a really good option for a Christmas line, but putting it in the Halloween packaging is just kind of confusing to me. But regardless of its placement among the collection, let's talk about the performance on this one, because it actually does perform really, really well. Among the 9 brand new fragrances, I think this one is probably the best performer, as this thing was like immediately producing scent when I first lit it. And this was another one that I actually decided to burn in my living room, which is quite big. So the fact that it was noticeably present and then filled the entire living room up with scent, and even traveled to the point where I could smell it from upstairs, I would definitely classify this in that like 8, almost 8.5 type of range for me. So yeah, while this one is not really the one for me personally, I do think that gourmand lovers are going to really, really love this one. And the fact that it performs as well as it does, I am happy that gourmand lovers have something to look forward to here. So up next here, let's talk once again about Haunted Harvest. My God, this is a great pumpkin fragrance. On Cold, I did get more of a fresh, almost inside of the pumpkin type of scent, but on burn, this one did actually change quite a bit for me, as more of those pumpkin spices definitely came through. There is a really nice warm cinnamon and clove. It does feel more bakery cinnamon as opposed to like a red hot cinnamon, and then that clove gives it a really nice warm fall feel. It is actually quite spice heavy on burn, so if you don't like those pumpkin spices, I don't think that this one is going to win you over or anything. But there's also just this really gorgeous like pumpkin guts and pumpkin flesh scent happening. The citrus and the ginger notes are still present on burn, although they do fade into the background just a little bit. They're really here to add a nice zest and freshness, almost like a crisp fog rolling through this haunted pumpkin patch. Now, as for how this one compares to Pumpkinhead post burn, which is another pumpkin and citrus combo, thankfully to me, they are still both distinct from each other. The citrus in Haunted Harvest is isn't as prominent as it is in Pumpkinhead, which has this strong like orange and vanilla combo that almost leans into like orange creamsicle territory. But comparatively, Haunted Harvest is a bit more fresh to my nose and not as heavy as Pumpkinhead is. As far as comparisons do go with this fragrance though, I think that this has more in common with Sleepy Hollow than it does with Pumpkinhead, as the pumpkin note in this candle does smell very reminiscent of the one in Sleepy Hollow, but Haunted Harvest is a bit more bright and fresh, while Sleepy Hollow has those darker, smokier elements. So let's talk about the performance here. This one was very, very solid. This one was definitely filling up my room with scent, and even traveling down the hallway, it settled into that 7 out of 10 range for me, which was amazing because I do absolutely love this fragrance. If you love a good pumpkin spice candle, and if you want something a little bit more fresh and atmospheric out of it, then I definitely recommend picking up the Haunted Harvest. This is one I'm definitely getting a backup of and even considering for the 4-wick. All right, so coming up next here, let's talk about Krampus. It is hands down the darkest and most conceptual candle of the bunch this year. So that holiday cheeriness that I detected on cold in my first sniff impressions really did kind of go away while this thing was burning, as those darker notes really just come to the forefront and kind of snuff it out in the way that like Krampus would. The leather, the smoky firewood, and the rosemary really come through. There is a really distinct rosemary here on burn to me, so if you don't like those herbal type of scent notes in your candles, then I don't think that you would particularly enjoy this one. The orange note on top is still present on the burn, but it really just melds into the darkness and leaves behind the bitterness of the orange peel. And on cold, I was detecting almost a little bit of that vegetable note. I couldn't quite make it out as it's really not descriptive, but on burn, it was kind of leaning more towards like a tomato vine type of scent or something along the lines of it. It wasn't like straight up punch you in the face tomato vine or anything, but it has that like peppery, almost savory like quality to it that really blends in well with those darker scent notes and gives this one a really weird, unique presence. And once again on burn, this one was giving me the hearthiness of a burnt out fireplace, which I think is really fitting for the holiday theme. So I do think that this does work very well for Halloween and also Christmas time, as it does have those holiday elements, but it's also dark and twisted. This is a mean fragrance, and it definitely embodies the spirit of Krampus. So the one downside here for me, unfortunately, is the performance. So once again, I did only get to burn this one once for about 4 hours, and it was a little bit on the lighter side for me. It wasn't unnoticeable in the room by any means. It's kind of hard to miss this fragrance, but for how aggressive it is on cold, the strength only really settled into around a 6 out of 10. I do wish it was a bit stronger on burn, although I definitely could see that as a downside for just how like weird this one is. If it was too strong, it might be a little bit like overbearing, but I do kind of want to experience that from this one. So I am hoping that it does pick up on subsequent burns. But if you want to try a truly dark fragrance from this line this year, if you like a smoky leather with hints of rosemary and orange and a heavy dose of charred firewood, then definitely consider giving Krampus a try. So next up, let's talk Sisters 3. So this was the one on cold that I just really could not get into. It has such an odd combination of scents, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was trying to do. And on burn, I do get a little bit more of the story. That medicinal grape note does kind of fade into the background on a burn here, which is definitely a plus for me. The other fruit notes on the top do kind of come in a bit more, and they all kind of have their own place at the top of this fragrance. Now, that's not to say that the grape note is entirely gone. It is definitely still present on burn, but it's not as in your face as it is on cold. The raspberry and the grape do kind of combine to give this one a little bit of like a sour punch on the top. On burn, there is a little bit more of that cinnamon coming through as well. I did detect a little bit of spice. It is more of that baking cinnamon. It's not red hot or anything, and there's not a lot there really. So if you are afraid of the cinnamon note in this, I don't think that you really should be, as it is very much in the background. It doesn't really add much to the scent. Now, what really does present itself here is that rose. It very much becomes the dominant floral note, and once again does smell more of like that fresh spring rose. And another thing that does really show itself on burn here is that cedar and sandalwood from the base, and they almost have this like really fresh chopped wood timber like scent to it. I wouldn't say it's like a smoky firewood or anything, just very much of nature. And finally, the last thing that was kind of consistent with my cold sniff and the burn is that like muskiness out of it. Now, it's definitely not as like heinous as I found it on cold, but it was still present for me on burn. And I think it's just the way that like the grape combines with the rose and the musk and the orange, that it just creates this like funk that I can't really get over. I just think that they kind of clash a little bit too much, and it really just throws me off. I do actually enjoy this one a little bit more on burn than on cold, but it still doesn't really come together for me. It's not particularly Halloween to me either. It's more along the lines of like a spring or late summer type of vibe to me, but although it doesn't read distinctly Halloween to me, what I will say is that this is a very unique scent. I haven't really ever smelled a floral done in this way before, and I did actually have fun trying to go in and find out the spell it was trying to concoct, even if I didn't enjoy the end product. But as far as performance goes here, this is one of the ones that I tried to give a couple of burns to just to really like figure out what was going on in here. And on both burns, it wasn't the strongest performer for me. It was one of those, once again, where it was noticeable in the room I was burning it, but I couldn't detect it as I was approaching. So definitely settled into that 6 out of 10 strength and throw for me. So as far as recommendations go, this one's definitely not the one for me, but if you like grape scents usually, and you also enjoy rose scents, then maybe give Sisters 3 a try. I am going to be very interested on how people are going to feel about this one, as while I do not particularly enjoy the scent that's happening in here, I have had a few other people smell this one for me, and they actually did like it and said it was like a nice fruity fragrance. So very interested to see what the consensus on this one ends up being. So up next, let's talk about the Raven. So this is just an absolutely gorgeous green, woody, and atmospheric scent. This just feels like an overgrown cemetery. The wooden vines and moss have overtaken every tombstone, and that's the same for on cold and on burn. On burn, that aged wood note from the top really comes through. It smells old and a bit rotten, but then that bergamot and the greenery really come through and give it this bright pop of life. The wooden scent note in this one on burn is so gorgeous and just gives it this really nice warmth. And the way that the bergamot combines with the vetiver and the moss gives this one a really nice, like fresh cut grass type of feel. And it almost does have this like bright springtime type of quality to it. But then that oud on the base really gives it this nice touch of darkness and a little bit of dirtiness that makes this one so perfect for Halloween. And I actually do really like the brighter qualities of this candle, because for the Halloween season, I do really like those like super dark and heavy fragrances, but I also feel like those are more suited for like a nighttime burn. So I actually do kind of find it hard to find a good Halloween scent to burn in the daytime leading up to it. And I think that's what's kind of perfect about this one, as it does kind of have this like foreboding atmosphere around it. But I do think that it would work really well for like a daytime burn during the Halloween season, almost like a sunlit cemetery. And also along that line, I do think that this is a perfect candle for like halfway to Halloween as well. But that's not to say that this one would only work for like a bright sunny burn, as it does have enough of that spooky atmosphere to be perfect for a nighttime burn as well. But let's go ahead and talk about the performance here. Now, this is also another one that I ended up burning 2 times, and it's not because I couldn't detect anything on the scent, it's just because I really like it, and both times it did perform really well for me. It filled my room up with scent and traveled beyond and settled into that nice 7 out of 10 range. So if you love a good green scent, if you love a nice dark aged wood, something bright with a little bit of decay, then definitely give the Raven a try. All right, so last up here, let's go ahead and talk about Vampire's Kiss. So this one really just sets that dark gothic atmosphere. On cold, the wine note was very prominent and up front, and on burn, that is definitely the case as well. It's got that deep, complex, almost salty fermented berry scent, and on cold, I wasn't really detecting the woody notes very much, but on burn, that oak wood really does shine through, and it gives this one almost like an aged wine cellar type of vibe. Now, while that oak wood does come through quite a bit on burn, it still does remain very berry and wine forward, and it really is distinctly wine. It's not berries masquerading as wine, as it does have a little bit of that like sharp alcoholicness that a wine would have. And I do have to say that I didn't really detect any spice in this candle on cold or on burn. So if you're afraid of that spice coming to ruin the wine, I definitely wouldn't worry about it. But let's go ahead and talk about performance here. So this is another one that I did burn multiple times, and this one was another really good performer and definitely settled in at around a 7 out of 10 strength and throw for me. This was one that on cold, I didn't really know how I felt about it, but after burning it, I do actually enjoy this one quite a bit. It does have a very nice aged feel to it, and I think that deep, complex wine scent is very perfect for a vampire fragrance. So if you enjoy a wine scent, a blackberry scent, and want your room to smell like a wine cellar, then consider giving Vampire's Kiss a try. So that is all I have for you guys today. So overall thoughts on this collection after having sat with it for a few days now. Unfortunately for me, this year's collection is a little bit of a mixed bag. There are some really beautiful fragrances here that feel classic Kringle candle Halloween to me, like the Raven, Krampus, and Haunted Harvest. I think that is a really great 3-piece for Halloween, and I really do love the fact that these are now coming in the larger formats like the 3-wick and the 4-wick. It's something that I have been looking forward to since the 4-wick launched in 2024, so seeing it fully realized here is really awesome. But the downsides for me, obviously, I just think that there are too many gourmands for my personal liking, as about half of this year's Black Jar collection is gourmand in one way or the other. And while they're not necessarily bad fragrances on their own, some just don't scream Halloween or even really fall to me. Like the Hansel's Trail candle, that one's just straight up a Christmas scent in the Halloween line, and I still don't really understand the doubling down of a chocolate fragrance with the addition of Death by Chocolate while already having Trick or Treat as the chocolate scent. I really do think that the inclusion of one would have been just fine. Personally, what I look forward to in the Black Jar collection specifically is those more spooky and out there offerings, of which we do have, but with the addition of the gourmands in the new fragrances for this year, I feel like I would have liked to see a couple of the gourmands in the returning scents be replaced with a more spooky offering. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be very bothered by the inclusion of so many gourmands in this collection if it was the only one that Kringle was releasing, but coming along in part 2, we do have the Boo Crew, which going off of last year's scents was a very gourmand centered line in the first place. So seeing a lot of foodie scents in the first line and then having the addition of a lot more foodie scents in the second line does kind of have me scratching my head just a little bit. Now, of course, while I may not be crazy about some of the inclusions this year, if you are a fan of gourmands, then I think that you have a lot to look forward to here, and maybe the inclusion of these fragrances will bring new eyes to the collection as a whole, and someone who wouldn't normally delve into this Halloween line goes for those more sweet fragrances and becomes a fan. And for those people, I am very excited. So there's always another side to the story. And also, obviously, as of this point, we don't really know what the other half of part 2 is going to be, and we don't even necessarily know if the Boo Crew is going to have those gourmand fragrances, but whatever those end up being, hopefully there are some spooky additions to the bunch. But until then, we are going to have to wait and see. So once again, part 1 of the Kringle Candle Halloween collection will be launching on August 7th at 12 o'clock midnight Eastern Standard Time, which is 9 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, August 6th, if you're on the West Coast. And of course, if you would like to save a little bit of money on this launch, you can use the code Wickeddullboy for 15% off of your purchase. I do really want to thank Kringle Candle once again for sending these my way to review for you guys, and I very much want to thank you guys all for watching. Remember to leave a like if you guys enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more Halloween content, because you know I have more on the way very soon. Until the next one, I'll see you guys later. Bye.